My wife is 36, and I am 40. We've been together for 12 years, a long relationship that began when she was quite young. We watched each other grow and evolve over the years. I always thought she was becoming a beautiful and intelligent woman, but I was wrong. She was becoming the perfect con artist, and I was the foolish husband who trusted her without question. She went to work every day, and I never doubted her loyalty. She started doing her hair exceptionally well, but that was the only change I noticed. Then one day, her sister called me. She told me that she felt terrible for betraying her sister's trust, but she couldn't stand by any longer while I was being cheated on. I was stunned. My heart stopped, and I collapsed to the floor. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I had genuinely lost control. I asked her how she knew, and she told me my wife had confided in her. Apparently, my wife had been struggling with whether or not to start a relationship with the delivery guy she saw every day. My wife was responsible for receiving packages for her work, and she had frequent interactions with him. They took advantage of the moments alone in the receiving office to develop their connection. As her sister spoke, I muted the phone and ran to the kitchen sink, vomiting. Part of me was relieved that her sister was telling me, but another part hoped it was all just a bad dream. What stunned me even more was that my wife had saved the delivery guy's number in her phone under the name Lisa. I couldn't believe it. I thanked her sister for telling me the truth. She was relieved to help, even though it was her sister, because she knew what my wife was doing was completely wrong. My wife didn't deserve to stay happily married and share my home with me. That night, I managed to guess my wife's phone passcode and read her messages. The exchange between her and Lisa was disturbing. If her sister hadn't stepped forward, I never would have known for sure that their relationship had been physical. I needed a confession, so I called him. He answered the phone groggily and didn't say anything. I explained who I was and begged him not to hang up. I told him I had something important to say. Even though I couldn't prove it, I suspected he had been sleeping with my wife while they were working. He denied it repeatedly, but I decided to share some information with him. I told him that my wife was HIV positive and that I had recently found out I was as well. There was a long pause on the other end. I urged him to get tested, and as I spoke, I heard his voice crack. He began to lose his composure. I asked if he had used protection with my wife, and he admitted that he hadn't. That was a confession I needed. I felt the need to apologize to him. Even as he completely freaked out, tears streaming down his face. Finally, after his emotional breakdown, I told him I was just joking. The whole point had been to get him to confess to the affair, and it worked. I hung up the phone and grabbed the mattress to roll my wife off of it. She woke up, confused and angry, demanding to know what was going on. I told her she had to leave. It was difficult to get her out of the house, even after I played the recorded confession from her affair partner. She was stubborn and insisted that she lived there. I told her she only lived there because I had accepted her as my wife, but that was no longer the case. We were no longer a couple. She got very dramatic and called the police. The officers mostly acted as mediators and couldn't really decide who should leave, since we were both residents of the home. However, one officer did suggest she stay with the affair partner. I thought it was an interesting suggestion, especially when she called him, and he told her he couldn't see her anymore. He'd just been told he was HIV positive and was terrified. He didn't want to sleep with anyone for a while. I found it ironic that he wanted nothing to do with her anymore. When she told the officer she couldn't stay with him, I offered to stay at my uncle's house until the divorce was finalized. This would give her time to pack and figure out where she was going to live, without any further interaction with me. She was furious with her sister, thinking I must have been tipped off to check her messages. But the truth was, her sister was the only one who was there for her when she needed it. Her sister had been there to support her, even as things fell apart. They all packed in together, and my sister and the lawyer handled the situation with grace and generosity. My ex wasn't bitter toward her sister. She just wanted to support her while she worked through her issues. In the end, I began to think that maybe I had married the wrong sister. My ex was eventually out of both of our lives, and I got my house back. I might have even connected with her sister for some fun and to keep in touch, talking about updates in our lives. Now that this ordeal was over, I felt a sense of relief, though I knew it would take me a lot longer to fully recover. I was also glad that we never had children together, and I was particularly thankful that her sister had called me to let me know what was going on. Because of her, I found out the truth when I did. Even though it was a long relationship that ended in a devastating way, I learned a lot of valuable life lessons. I learned how to coexist with another person, to communicate better, and to compromise. It also taught me the importance of having an open phone policy in a relationship. Don't be afraid to casually ask your partner to use their phone at random times and to look at their messages without fear of them noticing. You have every right to see what they're saying. In a committed relationship, there should be nothing to hide, especially when it comes to being honest about who you're spending time with. This is just another example of why it's important to use protection if you're sleeping with new people. Thank you for sharing your story. Now, let's get into today's second story. My wife and I were both on Instagram. I often posted pictures of both of us, but she posted mostly selfies. It was always about her, not us. I didn't really appreciate it, but I refused to be a controlling spouse. She was her own person, and I trusted her. Sometimes she came home from work late, but I never thought of her as someone who could cheat. She kept me updated on what she was working on, even sending me selfies from her workplace. What I didn't know was that those selfies were taken at different times and sent when she needed me to believe her lies. We had been married for 6 years when I discovered that my wife, who was 31 at the time, had been cheating. One night, while she was working late, I decided to kill some time by browsing Instagram. I started looking at her selfies and noticed one person who constantly commented, always being overly sweet to her. Curious, I clicked on his profile and was shocked by what I found. There were pictures of him with my wife, dressed up and looking very flashy. She wasn't wearing her usual work attire. One of the pictures was from that night, with a caption that read, "Happy 3 months." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She had been out with this guy, and in the photo, she looked uncomfortable, almost as if she didn't want him taking the picture. Perhaps because she had a feeling I might eventually see it. I waited for her to come home, my hands shaking. They had been together for 3 months, and in other pictures he posted, she was even seen with his kids. She had met his children, but she had always told me that she never wanted to have kids. Yet, she was willing to meet his. I was blown away, feeling scared and devastated. I felt like I had lost her, and worse, I didn't even know who she really was anymore. I called her, and she actually answered. She tried to act like everything was normal, saying she was just leaving work. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her not to play with my heart, and that she should just tell me the truth. I heard her gasp, like she had been punched in the gut. She was caught off guard by my accusation. She asked me what I meant, but she could barely speak. I told her I had just seen the affair partner's picture on Instagram and wanted to wish her a happy 3-month anniversary. I told her that it was good she got a head start on her new relationship, because our 6-year marriage was over. When she got home after a huge fight, I was surprised that she had the nerve to argue with me about whether or not she deserved to be forgiven after being caught in a 3-month affair. She thought she could persuade me that she deserved forgiveness for her 3-month sexual relationship with the affair partner AP. As she was standing there, AP arrived behind her, having followed her home. He demanded to know what she was doing and who I was. I told him I was her husband of 6 years, and that he was her affair partner. She tried to get him to leave with her, but he refused. He asked her if I was her husband, and she said, "Not anymore." He pulled away from her and asked if she was cheating on him with me. She lied, saying no, she was only cheating on me. He confronted her and told her she was out of his life. I told her the same thing, thanking the guy for dumping her and leaving her with me. She had been sleeping around, and she knew she shouldn't have done that. She apologized, but claimed she couldn't help that she had feelings for both of us. The more she spoke, the more she sounded like a person who didn't understand what a serious relationship meant. I couldn't believe it. She didn't cheat on me until much later, but I had already locked her out. When she couldn't get back in, she went to stay with the affair partner. He was a wise man and wouldn't let her in. I think she ended up staying with a relative she wasn't very fond of. She showed up to her court hearing looking miserable. The man she had been seeing ghosted her, and her living situation made it difficult for her to start a new dating life. My reaction: it's fortunate that you discovered the affair when you did. Although it's unfair and devastating, it's for the best. It's never easy to hear that your wife of 6 years has been unfaithful, but at least now you have the chance to start fresh. You found out through Instagram that your wife had been involved in 2 romantic relationships, even claiming she loved both men. I'm relieved she didn't get away with it for too long. In any romantic relationship, there should be no secrets. We're jealous creatures who want to be the one and only love for our partner. I'm sorry she wasn't worthy of the relationship you expected to have with her. She was forced to live outside, and she ended up in a relationship with someone she didn't even get along with. That's the least she deserved. Hopefully, she'll learn that she must be responsible, respectful, and prepared to deal with the consequences of her choices and actions. Proceed with caution and wisdom as you protect the hearts of those you love. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories.